Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
This is a Vault exclusive, obviously. And a couple days ago, a guy said that I don't know anything about this particular topic that I'm going to tell you about in a second because I'm just a lemon law lawyer. And I get that about once a week, twice a week, where someone says, oh, well, Steve, you wouldn't know about that. You're just a lemon law lawyer. And I've had people tell me they know more about the law than I do because I'm just a lemon law lawyer. And I say, oh, but are you a lawyer? No. So in their minds, there are lawyers, then there's civilians, then there's lemon law lawyers down here who don't know anything about the law and all they know is lemon law. And the weird thing is I've been practicing law in Michigan for 31 years. And when I took the bar exam like every other lawyer in Michigan and passed, there was not a single question on the bar about lemon law. It's not a testable subject. It's not a subject they test. So the idea that I'm just a lemon law lawyer kind of goes out the window just with the fact that I passed the bar exam. But a lot of people assume that because I specialize in that now, I've never handled anything else. Now, longtime viewers of my channels will know that I've mentioned from time to time, I once did one of these, I once did one of those. But I don't talk about it a lot for marketing reasons. I want people to think lemon law, Steve Lehto. Lemon law, Steve Lehto. But it doesn't mean that I know nothing of other areas of law. And so what happened was I did the video about stop arguing with my made-up facts. And a guy said, you don't know anything about machine guns. You know nothing about them. He said, for all you know, the guy who has the gun in your scenario had a tax stamp. And the name of my video was Stop Arguing with My Made-Up Facts. And he was arguing with my made-up facts. So he didn't even watch the video, apparently. Or he watched part of it. I'm not sure. But he said, you don't know anything about them because you're just a lemon law lawyer. And I'm so sick of hearing that I finally decided I'm going to make a list of everything I've done as an attorney and put it in one video so that if you watch this video, you can no longer say, but you're just a lemon law lawyer. And I know the people out there who are going to continue to say it don't watch my videos, they don't know. But I can tell you that occasionally I appear as a guest on other people's channels. And I appeared as a guest on a guy's channel. And while I was talking to him, he said, well, you're just a lemon law lawyer. And I don't think he realized that was a sore spot for me. And he's not a lawyer, though, either. But the implication in the discussion we were having was he knew more about something than I did because I'm just a lemon law lawyer. So in case you're curious, we'll start by saying I do a lot of lemon law cases. I have. In my career, I've handled thousands probably. I couldn't count. Along with the lemon law cases, though, I've handled other stuff that was defective. So that tangentially related, as I like to say. I've handled defective RVs, off-road vehicles, UTVs, boats, a sewing machine, computers, personal watercraft, snowmobiles, and probably 20 or 30 other items that I haven't thought of because I stopped handling non-lemon law cases a long time ago. There was a time when if you came into my office with a defective product, didn't matter what it was, I'd represent you just because I wanted to be able to add it to that list of things I've represented people on. But along with that, I've handled other Consumer Protection Act cases. So for instance, home remodeling cases. I used to handle those all the time. I represented people. One guy, for instance, he had a trial in Oakland County Circuit Court because a home remodeler came to his house in November, tore out all his windows, and left. Never came back to replace the windows. Just took the money and ran. My client had to hire another window person to finish the job that cost more to finish than it was paid the other guy, but that's just because of the way it was also screwy. But the point is, I've represented a lot of people. Home remodeling cases. 31 years is a long time, by the way. So I've covered a lot of ground in 31 years. I've handled Garage Keeper Liability Act cases, and I actually just did a video on this, which is going to go live on one of my channels, I think today or tomorrow. But Garage Keeper Liability is where you drop your car off someplace, and while it's in their possession, they damage the car. I've handled a whole bunch of those. Those aren't lemon law cases. I've also handled a ton of Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act cases, which is the law that the Michigan Supreme Court kind of screwed up last year with the lug nut case. But I've had people who brought their car into a shop to have it repaired. The dealership screwed something up or ripped them off or did something, and we sued them under the Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act and won. It's not a lemon law case. It's just a form of litigation under a statute in the state of Michigan. I've also handled landlord-tenant cases. Very early in my career, I would handle anything. And I, believe it or not, worked both sides of those. I've represented landlords, and I've also represented tenants. So I've handled landlord-tenant cases, which of course is not lemon law. Doesn't involve a product. I've handled employment law cases. People who were fired unjustly in the state of Michigan. I've handled those cases. Never represented the employer in one of those cases. But I've also handled class action cases. I've handled two or three. And the class actions were settled favorably. I've got my class members more than the free set of floor mats and the coupon for an oil change. I actually got my class members substantial relief. Believe it or not, I've handled personal injury cases. I've actually handled personal injury cases in my career. Somebody came to my office and said, I was injured, here's how I was injured, and we've got to sue the person that caused this, and I've filed personal injury cases. In fact, I've even filed a personal injury case against a government entity where I had to argue the sovereign immunity issue. And of course, nothing to do with lemon law. I've handled divorce cases, and that's plural, despite the fact I often jokingly tell people I only handled one and I hated it. I only handled one that was actually convoluted. I handled one for somebody else that was simple, and somebody came in and said, Steve, it's a simple divorce. We agree on everything. Just one of us needs to file it. Filed it. Nothing happened out of the ordinary, and that was fine. I had another one that spun wildly out of control that I did as a favor for somebody, and I promised myself never again. But I've handled divorce cases. I've also handled insurance bad faith cases, and I've done so many of those I couldn't count. There was a time when I handled them because I liked handling them because people couldn't get attorneys to take these cases. So someone's house burned down, house is destroyed by a tornado, or their car was stolen and the insurance companies denied the claims. And I would sue the insurance company on behalf of those people. I've also handled Social Security litigation where somebody applied for Social Security, it was denied, and I went in to that process. It's not quite the same as court because it's in a different building and different, but I've handled Social Security litigation. I also at one point in time was a small claims court mediator, where one court that had small claims court, I think every morning for a period of time, like from 9 till noon on Thursdays was small claims court. I forgot what the day of the week it was. But they would have me come in and sit in a conference room, and they'd give me the files first. And I'd walk out in the hallway and say, Johnson versus Smith. Two people raise their hands. They say, come over here. Who's the plaintiff? And I'd find out who the plaintiff was and say, okay, defendant, stay right here. Go in the room, ask the plaintiff, what's the case about? They'd tell me. Say, okay, bring the defendant in, send the plaintiff out. What's the case about? Tell me. And then I would think about it, is there some way I can resolve this? And then I would try to negotiate with the parties to get them to resolve the case. I was trying to act as a mediator, okay? I was not the judge. I didn't make rulings, but I'd often get to a point where I'd say, look, you want this much, but you're willing to take this much? You don't think you're entitled to anything, but would you be willing to pay him this much? And I would do that. And I acted as a mediator in small claims court. So I actually know quite a bit about the small claims court process as a result. I've also helped people in juvenile court. And they use all different language. They don't call the youngsters defendants, for instance, the respondents. But I've also represented a juvenile in a proceeding in juvenile court more than once. I've also handled bankruptcy cases, which I often don't talk about because I don't consider myself an expert in bankruptcy. But I knew a guy who did tons of bankruptcy cases. And there were certain kinds of hearings that he needed help with. And he'd say, hey, Steve, you want to handle a bunch of these? And I'd handle them, and he paid me. And this was, again, years ago, but it's something I did. I have handled cases in state court in Michigan, in quite a few of the district courts, quite a few of the circuit courts, but also federal courts. And in the federal courts, there's two divisions, Eastern and Western, and I'm admitted to both and have handled cases in both. I've probably handled 1,000 or more traffic tickets. And I mentioned this the other day, and somebody goes, why would you handle traffic tickets? Who in their right mind hires an attorney for traffic tickets? Well, there's a lot of people out there who don't want any points in the record, but some people who've got 2 don't want 3, because if you get 3, your insurance rates can go up. But hey, I used to handle traffic tickets. Appellate litigation. I've actually taken cases up on appeal many times. Many times. So I've done the whole appellate process, which is a whole different thing than the trial process. Okay? I've also done criminal defense. And this is the one that people, for whatever reason, it boggles their mind because they don't see how a lemon law lawyer could defend somebody. And when I was on that guy's podcast who said, well, you're just a lemon law lawyer, I said, so you don't think I know what? And he goes, you don't know about criminal procedure. And I said, well, I took criminal procedure in law school. Criminal procedure is one of the major areas tested on the bar exam. I said, and for a while, I was a public defender where I was the guy, oh, you can't afford an attorney? Meet Mr. Lehto. He's your attorney. And I was a public defender. So now explain to me how you as a non-attorney know more than me about criminal law after what I just told you. And he goes, oh, I didn't know that. Why did you assume that I'm ignorant on all these other things? So at one point in time, I was a public defender, but I've also represented people who simply retained me for criminal cases. By the way, I'm listing all these things now as things I have done in the past. I don't do them anymore because I've simply chosen to focus my practice on lemon law. But I've done all this stuff. So there you go. I also, and I hate to mention this, but I'm going to mention it anyways. I also helped my friend to get a drone certificate. At the time we did that, it was a new process. And I had several people go, oh, you don't need an attorney to do that. Well, it's an application you got to fill out and file someplace and follow through the process. And when I did it, it helped my client, and he was happy that I did it. I also, and I'm just going to throw this into just for the fun of it, I served on a condo board. And I'm mentioning that because I talk so much about HOAs and so on. People go, what do you know about it? Do you litigate those cases? I actually have litigated a case involving a homeowner association. But I've also been on a condo board. And then also, I have worked as an arbitrator, both as a sole arbitrator or where I was one of 3 arbitrators. So I have been hired by parties who cannot settle a lawsuit, who decided instead of trying the case, they'd have me hear all the evidence and then pick a winner. And I've done that where I was the sole arbitrator, and I've done it where I was one of 3 arbitrators on a very, very high dollar case. So there was me, 2 other arbitrators, we heard all the evidence, and we picked a winner. So I've done that also. So I'm merely throwing that in to let you know about the wide variety of things I've done. And then I've also defended people who were sued. Someone says they're being sued. I say, come on in. I look at it and go, I can defend you on this. I've defended people against lawsuits. I've tried cases. I've mentioned that before. I've tried cases in district court, circuit court, all this stuff. The one thing I've never done, I'm going to tell you right now, there is one gap in my resume. I have never been a prosecutor. I've never been a criminal prosecutor. It's the one thing I have never done. But I know a lot of attorneys who've never done that either. And that wouldn't make much sense for a lot of attorneys either. But I know attorneys who bounced around from job to job, and at one point in time they were hired as an assistant prosecutor someplace. But I've handled all these varieties of cases I just mentioned, including, like I said, the Social Security stuff, the juvenile stuff, the bankruptcy stuff, federal court, state court. I've done all this stuff. And people go, yeah, but you're just a lemon law lawyer. You're just a lemon law lawyer. So I'm doing that because I'm going to tell you the one last thing, is that the guy who commented and said, I know nothing about machine guns, said, because you're just a lemon law lawyer, you don't know anything about machine guns. Well, I actually have at the bottom of my list right here, in all caps, so I wouldn't forget to tell you because this is the punchline to the whole story, a machine gun case. I actually represented a gentleman who bought a machine gun. Now, I'm not going to get heavily into it. It was not a criminal case. It was a civil case. But I have actually litigated a case involving a machine gun. And so the guy who didn't know me, who, by the way, never responded again, I never heard from him again. He just disappeared. He'll never come back. He's one of these weirdos who just goes around the internet and insults people. Said, you don't know anything about this because you're just a lemon law lawyer. I was hoping he'd respond so I could say, hey, let's talk. I'm curious. I want to tell you something. You might find it interesting. He never got back to me, so I'm telling everybody else instead. Is that I actually handled a case on behalf of a client who legally owned a machine gun, and there was litigation that arose from it. And I don't want to get into the matter of the case because it is very, very obscure and strange. But suffice it to say, I have actually litigated a case where if you saw the pleadings, one of the allegations, I believe on the first page, if not the second page, was that plaintiff legally purchased a machine gun. And I've handled the case and resolved the case. My client's very happy with the results. And so when somebody goes, well, Steve, you don't know anything about that. You're just a lemon law lawyer. The only thing you could possibly argue and say because of my resume that you don't know anything about that would be if you said, Steve, you've never been a prosecutor. I would buy that for a second until you realize that I can know what a prosecutor does if I'm defending the cases brought by the prosecutors. The only thing I wouldn't understand is the politics that happens behind closed doors in the prosecutor's office. And even that I know a little bit about. And many of my students went on to become attorneys in Michigan. Some of them went to other states. My good friend Justin's in New York. I know some of them went to Canada because they were Canadian. And so I taught law school for 10 years, and a bunch of my students became prosecutors. And so I'm friends with some of these people. And I talk to them from time to time, and they tell me stories about what it's like working for the prosecutor's office. So I know a little bit about that. So I don't even think there's a knowledge gap there that would ever hurt me. But I would never come on here and do a video and say, let's talk about the politics of what happens behind the doors at most prosecutors' offices. Because I can't speak to most of them. I can only speak to one or two of them because there's two primary prosecutors' offices where my ex-students, former students have shown up at. So when people say, Steve, you're just a lemon law lawyer, that's what I am now. Like I said, for marketing purposes. But over my career, I've handled everything. The only thing I have not done, like I said, is be a prosecutor. And quite frankly, I don't think that's a huge gap in my resume. But it drives me crazy, especially when some guy goes, you're just a lemon law lawyer. You don't know anything about machine guns. And then he implied that if we were in court together, he'd kill me. And the thing is, he's not even a lawyer. How is he going to defeat me in court if he's not even a lawyer? And by the way, I've litigated a case involving a machine gun. I bet he hasn't, but we'll never know. So I'm sorry that comes across like a rant, but I thought it was important to point out because I know some people are curious, and I've had people actually say, Steve, can you someday just talk about the variety of things you've done as a lawyer in 31 years? And there you go. That's the variety. There you go. So thank you for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.